You might think this is interesting while I'm making a mess in my kitchen. So I've got an abundance of veg, and I don't have any place to store all of it because it's a lot of vegetables. And so what I usually do, it's kind of so secondhand to me that I don't really think about it much, but I often will preserve in these jars, these sealing jars, greens, spinach, not so much because it fries up, sautés up real good, but the tops of daikon radishes. You saw me pick in another video. Onion, and you can see the onion is chopped up there, and cabbage, along with some basil. Now I'm not going to put all this basil in there because I got a bit of it. I have some at the bottom, and salted water. So let me talk about what we're going to do here real quick. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. This is a fast and easy way to preserve especially greens that tend to yellow and go bad if you can't keep them cold or it's in the near end of the season. And so what I did is I washed them, rinsed them off first, you know, whatever the vegetables were on the bottom. Some of those veggies went into a stew that's in the Instapot right now. But right now what I've got is the vegetables rinsed off and washed off. Make sure you got the best of what you got. And then you're going to use a salt water bath. We're using, I know this says sea salt on it, but you want to use sea salt with no iodine. And I use mineral salts very often dissolved in hot water. And I create a bath. So this is salty water bath. And that's the final rinse. I slosh the vegetables around in it. Then I put it in a strainer. And then I pour out the water. And then we rinse it one more time. And of course, if you want a class on this, we have classes locally. But what I'm doing here basically with the saltwater bath is starting the preservation process. We're fermenting these using a lacto-fermentation. And this is just regular water. You know, we have a filter on the house. But we dissolve that salt in the water. And we want to make sure all the vegetables that we pack into this jar are basically rinsed in the salt water. Now, you want to have the greens to make what ends up making sour greens, or the light cabbage to make some sauerkraut. I don't mind mixing it all together because the mix together is what gives me the best flavor. And since this only is in here for 3 or 4 weeks until the color gets nice and dark, I just basically don't worry about it too much. So it's 4 teaspoons of salt in 2 cups of water is what I want to finish with. And then this is just a couple teaspoons of salt and water just to get that a little bit of saline solution. Now, if you had salt water, you could boil that salt water and do the same thing. We just want to coat it with the mineral, the salt, because that is our protective preservative. Now, the basil provides a little protection. The onion, sulfur in the onions provides a little protection. But if this is not a saline solution, this will make a big, dark, nasty mess because we are fermenting this without oxygen. So the creatures that are in there, the lactobacillus and all the other creatures that are in there, are going to start fermenting that material by breaking it down. And of course, we're mashing it in here. Now, don't make the mistake I have and slam it down here. You have to just push it down evenly with a little bit of liquid in the bottom. You can see the liquid starting to come out of the greens that are in here. Everything's shredded about the same size. You don't have to worry about cutting it up as much as you have to worry about shredding it because we want to increase that surface area. And then, of course, I'll seal the lid on it, and it will sit for 3 to 4 weeks and preserve it. This is great as you're going into winter to get a bunch of greens on the shelf. Now, if you have a cool environment, 65 degrees Fahrenheit or lower, doesn't have to be refrigeration, but 65 degrees or lower, like a basement or a cold cellar, you can actually put that in there, and it can take longer, up to a month to ferment, which is useful because today is June, and if it's fermenting for a month, that means August, I'll have fresh greens that have a probiotic in them, that have other valuable nutrients. Now, I do this so often that it kind of becomes secondhand. You know, I get the scraps for the compost just set aside here. I cut up stuff, I shred it, put it in. It doesn't really require a lot of work, but ultimately, if you do this at scale, you're going to have a couple big tubs set up so you can wash, rinse, and then salt water bath as you mash up the material and then get it stuffed into your jars. I'm just doing 1 jar today because a lot of this other stuff, like the spinach, starting to wilt a little bit. I'm going to get a lot of that will be breakfast tomorrow. I've got more daikon radishes in here. I've got some broccoli that's going to be done tomorrow. I'm just going to go ahead and separate those things, put them in a moist paper towel, and put them in the actual refrigerator itself. But this batch here, I want to get it started because it's going to be great fermented, highly nutritious. The fermentation unlocks a lot of nutrients that your body can't normally take. And I don't know about you, but if you eat a lot of raw vegetables or a lot of vegetables in a short period of time, that can sometimes mess up your stomach. And so the fermented food I find is more enjoyable. Plus, it's a savory flavor, so you can take it and use it as dice it up and use it as a side dish. There'll be a link in the description below, by the way, if you want me to do more details on fermentation. I do think I have some videos already on it, but we'll form a class in this area, and you'll go out and see how the garden grows. We'll talk about the importance of the micronutrients in the soil, and as well as the biological activity in the soil, because, again, if this was not organically grown at a local farm here, if it was not freshly cut, it wouldn't have the enzymes already on it that are going to be necessary for the fermentation process. The salt doesn't kill the good enzymes. It actually helps with that flavor. And I tasted it a little bit. It tastes just a little bit salty. You don't need to have it super salty. But if you'd like me to have a class on this, or you have specific questions, this is an excellent way to store your vegetables without canning, without any kind of energy. All you need is salt and water. And so while I was messing up the kitchen, I thought a lot of folks might be interested in that, and I wanted to go ahead and just give you a preview. Again, if you'd like me to do a longer course on this, you need hot water. Salt, hot water. This doesn't have to be hot for this rinse. But anyway, if you'd like me to go through a step-by-step course, there are all kinds of spring greens, winter vegetables, a lot of things that can be fermented and then be ready for your winter season. Even if you don't have refrigeration. And I've got crocks. You can use crocks. You can use jars. There's a variety of ways of doing this. But the last point, and I'm not going to run and get it, is I do have to put a little glass dish, a little glass cover here on the top in order to keep everything down below the water level. But again, if you want to learn more about this, I'd be happy to show you. And guess what? It's even easier in large crocks. You can do this with chilies, extra tomatoes. You can do this with all kinds of things, but it's actually much easier in a large crock. And we have some of those that we can show you. So, of course, if you want to attend a class on lacto-fermentation and other fermentation methods to preserve food without refrigeration, without any, you can just start a campfire and boil the water. Click the link below. It's to my website at www.prosperityhomestead.org. Go to the contact page and say you're interested in the fermentation class. These are critical skills you must know right now. There are rolling blackouts in South Africa. They're out of power for 12 hours a day. There's rolling blackouts in California and parts of the United States. Would you have nutritious and healthy food available to you even when the power is out? Would you have healthy and nutritious food available to you year-round, even when you have an abundant harvest during one season? And what's great about this, and I'm going to leave you with this note, is that all these vegetables, if I felt like if I had more crocks and I wasn't sure that I was going to eat all this in the next couple of days, I would actually go ahead and just pack a bunch of jars to ferment, put them downstairs in the basement, and then I could just eat and eat and eat. Now, I know you guys saw the video of where these vegetables came from. It's an abundant location. There's a lot of vegetables to eat there, so I don't have to pack all this stuff and preserve it. I'm going to pack about a third of it every time and have that set aside. But if you want abundant, nutritious, and healthy vegetables all year round, including fermented vegetables that are, in fact, many times vegan friendly, they are definitely vegetarian, but they are fermented in a way that makes delicious side dishes, makes wonderful main dishes. I'll take some of this stuff out, chop it up really fine, and cook a couple of eggs, put this on the side. By the way, you don't have to cook it. It is raw food. You don't have to cook it. It is ready to eat, very digestible. So if you have problems digesting cabbage or getting too many greens like I mentioned earlier, this is an excellent way of doing it. But again, if you want me to cover more of this, ask your questions in the comments below. I have a whole bunch of resources on this. I have some books I recommend. And again, it's just something I do naturally when I have an abundance of vegetables that I didn't even think that the podcast and the newsletter subscribers would want to see this, even though I have written about it before and there was a lot of interest. So again, we can have classes on site, we can have classes remote, but this is a skill that will save your life. You can do all kinds of greens. I even saw the homeless people in Taiwan doing different greens. I don't know why a lot of folks don't do it here, because it's not a poverty food. In fact, it's a highly nutritious supplement to your diet that adds the gut biome that's necessary to improve your thinking and clarity of mind, as well as the gut biome that's necessary to get the maximum nutrition out of the food that you have. Again, I'm Justin Hitt from Prosperity Homestead, and I'm going to get back to finishing this up. This is I'm setting this up for fermentation, and if you have any questions, visit prosperityhomestead.org. Go to the contact page. Be sure you join our newsletter. Ask the questions. I try to answer as many questions as I possibly can. And I want to thank you again for being a part of what we're doing here. You make possible a lifestyle that is enjoyable and healthy, and it allows me to do some projects that a lot of people have been dreaming about. But we're going to make possible for you in the future with these skills. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next podcast.